Hey guys, be sure and check out the My Ambitions as a Writer blog, where I, the Mrs. Morgan you know, Kate Morgan, shares my many opinions, stands with women everywhere, and stays rough and rugged addressing the mass public. Visit themorganyouknow.com/blog. Enjoy!
Hi, my name is Van, and you're listening to my daddy's podcast, The Morgan You Know.
Love the show, and you should check out my buddy Rod Morgan's pod, The Morgan You Know, as I'm confident he's primed to make some waves on the scene.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Morgan You Know podcast. I'm your host, Rod Morgan. This podcast is executively produced by James Jamriska. With me, as always, is my co-host in life and my co-host on this podcast, the lovely Mrs. Morgan You Know, Kate Morgan. Hello.
Hello!
We are here to launch a new gimmick we hope that will come up often on this podcast. Maybe not all the time, but quite often. We're going to call it Let's Try This Again. It's going to be a podcast that is predicated on the premise that a motion picture film based on an adapted screenplay, but not necessarily as good as it should have been. Whether it's a memoir or a great piece of literature or even a historical biography, the movie sadly didn't work nearly as well as the story itself, so we're going to investigate what went wrong and try to make it better ourselves. Mrs. Morgan, you know, did I leave anything out there?
No, I think you got it.
All right, so the first movie we have chosen in this series is a movie that came out in 1990, directed by Brian De Palma, based off a Tom Wolfe book. It is The Bonfire of the Vanities. So joining the Mrs. Morgan You Know and I to talk about this very movie, I'm going to blow everybody's mind right now to start this podcast off. I believe there was probably a time where all four of us were located in the very same Hollywood Video in Muncie, Indiana, while this very movie rested on Hollywood Video shelves to be rented by customers. Joining us first, my co-host on Balls and Brew from the great state of North Carolina, it's Chris King. Chris, hello.
Hello, Internet. Hey, Rod, how's it going?
Wonderful. And joining us to create the foursome that all were together in a Hollywood Video at one time. He's been with us to talk about Best in Show. He's been with us to talk about the Academy Awards. He's our guy down in Muncie. Matt Roberts vacated Muncie and went to Arizona, and Jake Williams showed up in Muncie to be our new man in Muncie. Jake Williams, hello.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great evening. This is going to be a great time. Solid movie, a lot of thoughts, a lot of feelings about this one. But I'm looking forward to jumping in.
All right, so let's just start here. Chris, I'm going to start with you real quick because I brought you in only a few scant weeks ago, and I told you the project was we're going to try to examine Bonfire of the Vanities. Your first thought was what?
The Melanie Griffith quote. I'm always a sucker for a soft dick.
I wondered if you were going to go there because that is exactly why I decided to bring you on this podcast.
I don't know why, but that quote has stuck with me for years. Probably because when this came out, I was a prepubescent boy, and so that stuck with me really, really, really well.
So you do have some, I mean, you are older than all the rest of us on this podcast, so you have some memory of when this film came out in 1990.
Yes, I do.
Right.
Plus some extra memory from the mid-'80s New York lifestyle that Tom Wolfe really satirized in his novel.
And you were a bond tradesman then, right? In the 80s in New York? So, I mean, this is all coming back to you.
Yeah, it's pretty fresh in my memory still.
See, I'm giving you some grief about remembering this movie as a child, but I was telling Kate, I remember I was telling you that I have vague memories of seeing this at a drive-in movie theater in Plymouth. Like, I kind of remember it sort of being a big deal. I remember I was 10 years old, right? I was just starting to maybe get into, media and movies and all that kind of stuff, and I think my parents were definitely excited for it. Do you, being the youngest member on this podcast, have any memory of this movie whatsoever?
No, I had never seen this movie, and I hadn't read the book either until you had suggested doing this episode. Even though I adore Tom Wolfe and have read most everything else he's ever written, but no, I had not seen it. And I know why.
I was just gonna say, Jakester, let's go to you. You're a resident film buff around here. You've tended to see a few more movies than Kate and I have, and you probably tend to think a few more movies are better than we're entertained by. What were your thoughts on Bonfire of the Vanities when I first brought you in on this project?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked that because I always get it confused. When I was a kid, I always got it conflated with Chariots of Fire. And
Very different. Very different.
very different. And what's the Demi Moore movie? Oh man, it's got a bunch of the Brat Pack.
St. Elmo's Fire.
St. Elmo's Fire. I used to get these movies confused all the time as a kid because I wasn't paying attention to what was actually going on. So I thought it was all one big movie with all these different stars in it. And I was like, wait a minute. No, this one's got Tom Hanks, right, of course. It's got Bruce Willis and Melanie Griffith. Okay. So it was a total confusion on my point, like my entire childhood, thinking this was one or two other movies at the same time.
There you go. So that the fire was just was igniting in your mind, if it was, as in one big combustible mishmash of movies. Kate, let's go to you. You're a Tom Wolfe person. You love the right stuff. I know you've read Charlotte Simmons. When you got in and reading this book for me, what did you think about it? What should we know about this book?
Well, I mean, it's excellent because it's Tom Wolfe, but it is also his first piece of fiction, right? Like, he's basically a nonfiction writer up until this point, aside from a few articles here and there. But this story essentially is, it's bitter, it's satirical, sometimes humorous. It's a drama, though, about ambition and racism and social class, politics, and most importantly, probably greed. It takes place in 1980s New York City, and it centers around three main characters: Bond tradesman Sherman McCoy, Jewish assistant district attorney Larry Kramer, and British expatriate journalist Peter Fallow.
Nice, Chris. Your initial thoughts on the book, things you want to make sure everybody knows about the book. I know you got through with it just a couple of days ago, even.
Yeah. So I reread it. I had read it a while ago. A couple things to note for our listeners is that Tom Wolfe spent about 3 years traveling with New York City police, shadowing New York ADAs and DAs in like 84 and 85. He had set this up as a serial to be written in Rolling Stone, and then when he wrote the novelization, he did change some things. Sherman McCoy was not originally a bonds trader. He changed that for the novelization. So he really spent a lot of time really seeing the criminal justice system and the class system in New York up close and personal for about 3 years, almost 4, before he started writing this.
I like that. That's one thing that I know that Mrs. Morgan, was really telling me when we were watching the movie, that the book focused on a little bit more than she felt the movie did. Mr. Williams, I'm going to come to you on. Wow, Mr. Williams sounds like I'm on the football show. I got to call you Jake. Jake, I'm going to come to you on this. Brian De Palma, tell us where we're at on Brian De Palma in 1990 when this movie came out.
Well, he had definitely had some swings and some misses. Definitely the 80s were. I mean, when it comes to De Palma, he's one of those unbelievable directors who came up with Spielberg and Lucas and Scorsese, and he came up with all those guys. And so I think that at this point in his career, he was just kind of, I would say, he's floundering a little bit. I mean, obviously he had huge success later on with Scarface, for instance, but this was before Snake Eyes. This was before Mission Impossible. Talk about our boy Tom Cruise. And this was before De Palma kind of had a renaissance in the 90s like he did. And so it was a bit of a struggle for him at this point in his career. I mean, he'd just come off from really riding high in the 70s and making some iconic films. And but I think at the same time, as with any kind of working director, you have these guys who don't have to work a day in their life. A lot of the guys he came up with made highly successful, highly merchandisable type pictures, but while he continued to work. So he just kind of kept going and kept bouncing back and trying different genres and trying different styles and that sort of thing over the course of his career. And I think that's one of the things that's long-lasting about De Palma. Despite this film, I think he had more successes than misses.
Yeah, I want to play off of what you said there, and I think taking a swing and merchandising is kind of where I want to turn to when we talk about the stars in this movie and where they were at the moment that this movie came out. So yeah, Tom Hanks coming off of an Oscar nomination in the movie Big, right? You got to think about Tom Hanks this way in 1990. Bosom Buddies ends in 1982, all right? He then bumps around on a couple of other TV shows. He shows up on an episode of Taxi. He shows up on an episode of Cheers. Then he does a legendary 3-episode run on Family Ties as the drunk uncle, all right? And that really kind of turned people on him a little bit. They're like, hey, wait a minute. This guy can kind of act. 1984 is huge for Tom Hanks. He does Bachelor Party and Splash. Boom, we're off, right? Tom Hanks is a huge movie star. Doesn't really work out for him, though. He does Man with the One Red Shoe, Volunteers, Money Pit, Nothing in Common, Every Time We Say Goodbye, and Dragnet. None of these are huge movies at all. Then, in 88, he gets Big and Punchline, and in 89 he gets Burbs and Turner and Hooch. So Tom Hanks is huge at this point. He's ready to skyrocket and take off. I think that's how he gets cast in this movie.
Rod, you're forgetting about one major movie there. I think everybody out there knows this. It's Joe versus the Volcano.
I knew somebody would call me out on leaving one movie out of that entire run. I thought to myself at numerous times, do I do the entire run or do I edit it a little bit? Ultimately, I edited one movie. And of course, Chris, you contrarian for the sake of contrarian's sake, call me out on it.
That's why you have me on here, Rod.
Chris at that time worked for craft services on Joe versus Volcano.
Listen, Joe versus Volcano was very profitable all in all. So yes, the craft services, it paid my rent for a good 6 months.
All right, but I contend that Tom Hanks is a problem in this movie, and we'll get to that as we move on. But let me talk about where Bruce Willis is at here, okay? Bruce Willis is on a show called Moonlighting that runs from 85 to 89. Bruce Willis wins an Emmy the first year Moonlighting is on TV for Best Actor in a Dramatic Series. Moonlighting wraps in 89. Before Moonlighting wraps, he does a little movie called Die Hard in 1988 that is an absolute huge, mega success.
Best Christmas movie of all time.
Exactly.
Yes.
He does a kids movie called Look Who's Talking with John Travolta and Christy Alley, where he's just the voice of a baby, and it goes bonkers, huge. He's a huge comedic success off of it. Does Die Hard 2 in 1990, and that's where he's at, coming into Bonfire of the Vanities. I also contend Bruce Willis got cast in this movie just because he's constantly drunk in Die Hard and Die Hard 2. Well, not as much in Die Hard, but in Die Hard 2, he's definitely drunk at times, and he got cast in this movie just to play drunk. We'll get there. And then Melanie Griffith is a child actress who'd been around, done a whole bunch of TV show appearances. She does Body Double in 84, Something Wild in 86, Cherry 2000 in 87, Working Girl in 88, gets nominated for an Oscar, does Pacific Heights, one of the best creepy landlord movies ever made with Matthew Modine and my guy, Michael Keaton. And that's where she's at coming into Bonfire of the Vanities. And I need to throw in real quickly here, Morgan Freeman, who plays the judge in this movie, all right? Morgan Freeman started acting in 1964, bounces around and does a whole lot of stuff, doesn't amount to much. 1971, lands on a kid's show called The Electric Company until 1977. He does 12 more years of bit parts of varying success levels in movies until 1989, where he goes nuclear and does Lean on Me, Driving Miss Daisy, and Glory, all in the same year. That's incredible. Jake, anybody else have a year like Morgan Freeman had in 1989?
Absolutely not. He's a legend, and the fact that he made all those movies and put together such varying performances, that's one of the things that's so great about him now. I mean, now he's become the icon that he is, but back in the 90s, he had such opportunity to do such different kinds of work. Every movie you just listed is so drastically different. The styles, this movie in comparison to Glory, for crying out loud. You know what I mean? Just radically different projects, radically different movies. And that's what makes it so exciting. I also saw that Saul Rubinek was in this, and he's famous. He's famous for being one of those characters. He popped up in Frasier quite a bit. Kim Cattrall's obviously in this movie too.
Yeah, we get a little F. Murray Abraham as well. Those are the other three people that I wanted to mention that really do bring the movie together. Kim Cattrall, who plays Sherman McCoy's wife, Saul Rubinek, who plays the assistant district attorney, and F. Murray Abraham, who plays the district attorney. Now, Morgan Freeman as the judge is a change up from the book, and that really is where the movie starts to take a diversion from the book. I want to go back to the Mrs. Morgan here as some of the main differences between the book and the movie.
Well, I don't think that that's where it starts to take a different turn in from the book. I mean, that's done well before we ever meet the judge's character. But I think going back to what the premise of this show is that, okay, how did the movie go wrong versus an acclaimed novel? And in this case, I think Bonfire of the Vanities does this a really good job of being timeless. And so it's timeless in its themes of privilege, of course, in race, social structure, again, greed. All of these concepts are still, applicable now, even if some of the characters and where they are in life aren't. And so like one thing I had read while looking into this was something that George Will had written about the book, someone who I certainly do not agree with politically, but I do on this statement. He said, Bonfire of the Vanities is news that will stay news because a century hence readers will find preserved in it the strong flavor of some unfortunately important slices of life in our time. And I think that's just so true. So there are a lot of things in the book that are not true in the movie. And I think one of the main pieces is that while, yes, the book is satirical, it's also very, very real. And the movie is nearly comedic. And in that regard, Tom Hanks, who some critics and you going into this, we thought a little bit about Tom Hanks, why would they ever cast him? I actually have the least bit of problems with Tom Hanks being cast as Sherman McCoy in this movie than I do with other aspects of things that didn't coincide with one another. Like things like the way it portrayed black characters, namely Reverend Bacon and Henry Lamb's mother. They were almost portrayed as evil and as power hungry as Sherman McCoy and some of the other wasps on Wall Street. And it doesn't actually accurately capture the character of Larry Kramer, who's the ADA, who has a huge storyline in the book. And I think that they put a lot of his downfalls on the district attorney, Abe Weiss. So there are lots of things that just do not ring true. Morgan Freeman, however, I think is fine as the judge. Even though the judge in the book is an old Jewish man, I think Morgan Freeman is probably the only great part of this movie at all.
Yeah, Chris, how about you? Anything need to be added there about the differences between the movie and the book before we then move along and just talk a little bit more about the movie?
Well, I think they did something right in the movie. Like I think we're all going to agree the movie did kind of bomb. But I do think they did something right in the movie where they gave Morgan Freeman that last, monologue there at the end of the movie. That was something that was not in the book. The book ended very differently from the movie, where the judge actually lamented, and the book changes things. Like, you were in the middle of the trial in the movie when it ended. In the book, it was still during the grand jury indictment hearing phase. So there was a lot of different things that went on, and the book, really, you didn't get that real good speech at the end. I do think Morgan Freeman portrayed a 1980s Manhattan, New York judge very well, where he gave the business to the guy at the beginning of the film, saying, you're going to take whatever plea bargain we give you, and you're going to be happy about it. Otherwise, I'm going to kick your ass, and you're going to be getting 25 years to life. I mean, so I thought they did a great job in the movie portraying that judge differently than what the book did. But that's about the only time I thought the movie did better than the book.
In this kind of GIF and meme culture we have, I wonder why that speech by Morgan Freeman standing in a judge's robe, right, in front of a bunch of people, yelling that at folks, hasn't just been cut up and sent out on the internet more. But Jake, let me ask you this. What movie do you think Brian De Palma was making? Do you think he thought he was making a comedy, or do you think he thought he was making something else?
I think he thought he was making a dark comedy. And I think that's probably why everybody who's a part of this film got on board. The tone of this movie is all over the place. I mean, as a kid watching it, I remember even then thinking, the tone of this thing is all over the map. You set out to do a very specific type of feature, have a very specific type of plan. And I don't know. I think he read what Tom Wolfe wrote and came up with some completely different concept about. I mean, Tom Wolfe was a co-writer on the film, but it's drastically different. It's drastically different than from what I understand the book to be. So I definitely think that he was going out for a dark comedy. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think clearly they got Tom Hanks, right? They said Tom Hanks is coming off a big, Tom Hanks is huge. We got Tom Hanks on the front of our poster, but Tom Hanks maybe, in my opinion here, right? I've not read the book, but in my opinion, I'm just thinking as producer guy, right? Put me in your elevator pitch for the movie. You got Tom Hanks, all right, but what is he? He's a bond trader on New York. Every woman's supposed to want him. Wait a minute. I'm not so sure that Tom Hanks is the guy that every woman's supposed to want. So then what we have to do is we have to put him in situations where he can be manic, where he can be exasperated, where he can be a little bit at his wit's end. And nobody does that better than Tom Hanks. And the other thing we have to remember is us watching this movie now in 2022, we're putting 25 more years of Tom Hanks as a big time movie star on Tom Hanks in that movie. And when he did it originally, that wasn't there.
I also think that like that manic behavior was definitely in the scene where the very fictional scene that did not happen in the book at all, where he is shooting the gun in his Manhattan apartment, and there's people everywhere, and his wife is still trying to keep up appearances, and that didn't happen. So I think that contributes to the dark comedy fantasy dream world that I think the director was trying to put together for viewers, and it just didn't work.
Well, there's always going to be a problem, too, when you're taking a novel that's damn near 700 pages and has multiple themes and allegories intertwining throughout the whole book. You're going to lose some of those going into a less than 2-hour movie.
See, but Chris, I think you just make a drama in that case, right? I think instead of trying to make it a longer dark comedy, I think you just make it a good 2-hour. I mean, Martin Scorsese's made a history out of 2-hour and 40-minute movies. Why not just do that?
You're right. If it was remade today, I think it would be
Which
made
we're going to try to do later. Good
I think it would be made more as a drama than a dark comedy. I think that they got Tom Hanks to sign on because Tom Hanks was a fan of the book, and they didn't probably have the adapted screenplay finished yet. And if you're a fan of the book, you're going to want to sign on to this movie. But they didn't have a real good vision of what the movie would be at the time that they signed on Tom Hanks. Because he was. Like, this is even before he gets on his real good streak of Gump, Saving Private Ryan,
League of Their Own,
Castaway, where he went on a streak of Oscar wins. And he was still bringing in box office bombs. Not bombs, but like bucks. And so, like, they get Tom Hanks, the big draw. This is still a time in Hollywood where you could spend money on an indie type dramedy.
But this movie was expensive. There's no doubt about that.
Well, like you don't see studios put that type of money into this type of movie anymore.
But that's a different conversation. Yeah,
I think also going into the storytelling and at the time that it was told, I don't think that they had writers on this who could accurately portray the Black experience. And I don't think we saw that in this movie whatsoever. And it wasn't the way that these characters were written in the book. And I think it was unfair to that angle and to that big piece of the book itself.
Well, I have an issue with the way Tom Wolfe portrayed quite a few different characters in the book.
Okay, let's go into that. Let's stay here real quick before we move off of the book and maybe start to move along a little bit. Why is this book important? What ultimately is this book trying to say, and why is it important? And I think what we're saying here is that the movie misses the mark a little bit. So, Chris, let's start this conversation out here by what you had a problem with in the book.
Well, and actually, Chris, why don't you start out by saying what this book is about, right? Like, what the big point? We haven't even talked about that. Like,
I'm sorry, folks. I don't read. I'm sorry. I don't read. I'm sorry.
So there's definitely multiple different types of things that Tom Wolfe is trying to portray in this book. There's the different tier of justice for essentially in the book, black versus whites. The book is very heavily racialized between WASP, which is white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, Jewish, Catholics, blacks, Latino. Like, there is very, very divided into ethnic sects. And then it tries to portray how those different sects act within the justice system and society, how they are portrayed. You get the elites with McCoy and Maria's type of lifestyle versus like even the ADA, Kramer. And then even below that, of course, Lamb's family and especially the mother. So there's a lot of different dynamics that the book goes through and weaves together allegorically. One thing that the movie misses that the book does really well is to show Kramer versus McCoy going back and forth, where McCoy's moving one direction, Kramer's trying to move the other direction, and they're almost like a mirror image of each other, but just in different classes. And it goes really far. There's the Irish Catholic versus the white Protestant in the book that you don't really see in the movie at all. It's quite like really Wolf really did a good job of showing the greed of Wall Street in the 80s versus the poor and poverty-stricken of the 80s, which has really reared itself again in 2020 and to the present, especially. So, like, I really think it's still relevant today, and that's why they still call this book, the quintessential 20th century novel.
But the story itself, I think, is important to talk about because to get down to the basic plot of this whole thing is that you have Sherman McCoy, the successful bond trader, right, who is living on Park Avenue, and he has a mistress, Maria. And after he picks her up at the airport one night, they mistakenly enter the Bronx, get off on the wrong exit, and trying to find the way back to the highway, they get on this ramp that's littered with trash and trash cans, and so Sherman gets out of the car, tries to remove the trash cans. Two black gentlemen approach them, they're young men, approach them, and they immediately perceive, uncertainly, that they're predators. And so they attempt to flee and get into an altercation. The mistress, Maria, jumps into the driver's seat and fishtails into one of the boys, who then flees the scene. So it's essentially a hit and run of a black youth by a very wealthy white couple. And that is where all of this unfolds. And so you have first of all, the Reverend, who, Henry Lamb is the young man who is hit. She comes to him and, wants to seek justice for her son. The Reverend, as Tom Wolfe said, was taken from bits and pieces of Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. And, he then seeks out a reporter who is Peter Fallow, who's played by Bruce Willis in the movie, to start writing about this and start seeking justice. And then you get into the legal system of it all and him being arrested and tracked down and arrested in the Bronx and how that unfolds. So that's what this entire story is about in both the book and the movie. And there are these different pieces that don't work in either one of them.
Yeah, Jake, I think Brian De Palma is interested only really in making a movie about privilege, don't you? Right? Like, I think that like he only sort of lightly dips his toes into the ethnic and the different races thing, right? Like, it's clear because he's painting with the broad brush, but he's not really interested in telling that story. I think he's more interested in telling the story of privilege, which is why you get more scenes with Sherman and his father, and why you get way more scenes with what's going on with Bruce Willis and his motivations and what's happening in his life. And I just think De Palma's way more interested in telling a story about privilege than he is talking a story about race that Kate and Chris have told us the book is about.
I would agree. I think that when De Palma probably picked up this project, it gave him an opportunity to examine that aspect of our culture. And that's why it feels so lavish and so 80s, because it really is. It really is a perfect opportunity to examine those types of things, examine that type of culture, the successful waspy type person, above the law, some of the classic kind of Wall Street type of vibes, which is a whole other movie from a whole other, from this exact same era. But I definitely think that there's definitely some comparison, like you're saying, about the way that they approached it, that's really what they want. They want to focus on that rather than some of the other, I wouldn't call them sticky issues, but definitely issues that they definitely wanted to avoid.
Yeah, I think avoid is the right thing, right? I don't think Brian De Palma's trying to act as if they don't exist. He just doesn't want to explore them at all, right? And I think that his choice in the movie, again, I'm focusing on the movie here because I've not read the book, but the movie opens with Bruce Willis basically giving us narration right from the start, right? And Bruce Willis is being ushered out of a limousine, completely falling down drunk. People are tucking in his shirt, trying to dress him up and look good, and then he's ushered out onto a stage where a lot of people are cheering for him, right? So, I mean, right from the start in this movie, you get, this is going to be about celebrity. This is going to be about a rise and fall. This is going to be about a complicated white man dealing with his inner demons. And sure enough, with as much as they focus on Bruce Willis in this movie, who I think is the bigger problem, I really do. As much as I don't buy Tom Hanks as the Lothario Wall Street character, right? That's definitely got to be more Michael Douglas with his hair slicked back, giving me greed is good, right? Like that's more who I want to see doing that than Tom Hanks. But Willis, I think, I want to see Willis crawling through ducks, flipping on Zippo lighters in a tank top, right? Worrying about getting a machine gun and taking out Hans Gruber. I don't buy him as a guy who used to be a successful writer / now bootstraps reporter.
Well, and the problem for me, especially, is in the book, this guy is British. And part of his whole character is being, fed up with the way America is, how it's ran, what capitalism has done. Like, he has all kinds of issues with America. And in a book where race and ethnicity meant so much, to take away that specific type of ethnicity from major characters, whether it be Bruce Willis as the supposed British journalist, or the Killian, the defense attorney for McCoy, who's supposed to be Irish, who's definitely not Irish in the movie. Like, I think you lose some of that in the movie where you had that in the book.
And Jake, let's talk about a casting that I think they got absolutely stone cold right. I mean, Melanie Griffith in this movie as Maria is absolutely perfect, right? I don't think even in 1990 they could have got anybody better for the mistress role, right?
No, absolutely not. I mean, coming off of Working Girl. When was Working Girl? Was this
88? That was 88. She got nominated for an Academy Award for that one.
Oh my God, you're right. And that's such a great movie. Such great music. It's such a classic, and it really set her up to kind of fit this role and to kind of, fit the place that her daughter would fill years later, But I definitely think that there's something to be said about how priceless she is. She's such a natural. I mean, most actors and actresses are, but she has this, hometown girl quality that she really is able to explore and kind of bend the rules on that and kind of put her in that mistress category. I think it's great. I think it's a great casting.
She's got that breathy voice down too that we so often associate with mistress types in TV shows and movies, right? She just kind of Sherman, you know what I mean? Just that complete voice
Sherman.
Of like, yeah, I'm so vulnerable.
So what's crazy is Brian De Palma did not necessarily want her on the movie. He was really leaning towards somebody else. So there's a book called The Devil's Candy by Julie Solomon. And she is a journalist who was able to be essentially on the set with Brian De Palma from beginning to end on this shoot. Was able to record things. She ended up writing this book, The Devil's Candy, which is still considered the best inside Hollywood look at a movie production. They actually, like Brian De Palma specifically, really pushed to do get Uma Thurman in at that role instead of Melanie Griffith. And he pushed hard to get her to come and fly out to do a reading with Tom Hanks, and they got that accomplished, but they still went with Melanie Griffith. So it was really almost Uma Thurman. But Tom Hanks preferred Melanie, so that's who they ended up going with.
How about that? Well, I think we've talked a bit about the book. We've talked a bit about the movie. Let's move on to another part we want to have be this. Let's try this again. Could this movie be made now, and what changes would we make? Mr. Williams, let's go to you as the filmmaker here, as the one who I know right now currently is writing a screenplay. What kind of changes would you maybe make from the movie per se? Because I know you've not read the book like I have, to maybe make it more adaptable to 2022 terms.
Well, I think the first thing you got to do is make it inclusive. I think that to our point about I hate to call it whitewashing, but I definitely think there's something to be said about the plot of the book that want to be re-examined. So that's where I would start. I'd really dive in there. I'd really get in there and dig in and make it much more inclusive, much more diverse in terms of how I casted it. The cast itself, that's another question. We'll get around to that, but whenever you're ready to fire off some ideas about who you'd cast in this picture. But no, that's where I would start. I would start by really re-examining the source.
How about this idea? I think I'd be willing to spend a bit more time with the Reverend Bacon than we get in the 1990 version of Bonfire of the Vanities, and I think that would help with the inclusion bit for sure, right, Kate? Like, somebody worth thinking of to be in that role certainly would denote a little more screen time.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that you tell this story from the vantage point of the three main male characters. While, yes, adding in more of Reverend Bacon to it, but he's not one of the main three. You need to have equal time with Sherman, with Kramer, and why am I missing
Peter Fallow.
And Peter Fallow. So you need all three of them and showing their different vantage points on life and how all three of them center on greed. Every single one of them does, and wanting more, and how entitled they think they are to having it all. And then I think make it more inclusive by having a little bit more from Reverend Bacon and from the Bronx community that's involved in this as well, and what they're looking like. But yes, I think that this story could be told right now. I absolutely think it could be told right now.
Yeah, because you could get a little more inclusive as well with this being the Bronx. You'd have Bronx detectives working the case, right? So I mean, you could get seriously inclusive with your Bronx detectives as well that are working the case, right? And you could have them come in. Chris, how about you? I know you had some thoughts. What would you change up if you were making the movie now based off the Tom Wolfe book?
If you were going to remake it now, I think it definitely can be. It has to be done one or two ways. I think it has to be a straight drama, which is probably preferable, really. And if you're going to do a straight drama, one thing you have to do is you have to expand on the female characters a little bit. Even in the novelization, Judy, Maria, they are way too dimensional. There's no type of character growth. You never understand or get told what their thought processes are. Why does Judy McCoy continue to want to go and keep up appearances for as long as she does? Things of that nature. You don't get that type of growth in the novelization or the movie.
I completely disagree with you, Chris. I think that it's told that way for a reason, because this is a man's world. These women are peripheral to everything else that happens in all of these men's lives. They don't care about, like in Kramer's case, he does not care about his wife. He cares about just trying to go on a date with the one juror. And in Sherman's case, he doesn't care about his wife, and he really doesn't care about Maria either, other than getting laid. Their thoughts and opinions and feelings do not matter to him whatsoever.
In the book, though, it does. Maria does really matter to Sherman, because he constantly says, no, she's done right by me during the affair. She's been tried and true. It's not until the last chapter of the book he finally realizes that he has to...
She's done right by him by not incriminating him, right? Like, he doesn't give a shit about...
She didn't tell his wife.
Yeah, he doesn't give a shit about what her hopes and dreams are.
But
like, no. It's just is what it is. Like, this is told from a man's perspective, and I think it's important to keep it that way, because to just add women because you think that they need to be there and not be two-dimensional is not authentic to the way the story was written, and I think that's why it's so important still.
Could we make the judge a woman, though? Like, we've talked about how, they switched up the judge anyway, right? Could we make the judge a woman?
I think you keep Morgan Freeman as the judge.
Well, Morgan Freeman's too old at this point to play the judge now. I mean, Morgan Freeman's almost
No,
90.
judges are old. I should know. I've seen a lot of them. They're old.
All right. Well, I think.
But I will say that I thought Kim Cattrall in the movie, like her portrayal of Judy, made me want more of that character. Maybe that's where I'm coming from.
But that's Kim Cattrall, though, because she's a great on-screen presence, right? And she's playing against type a little bit in this movie, being the waspy, buttoned-up
completely
wife, right?
different.
She was the sex pot earlier in her career in the 80s,
and then even after that too, like completely different than what I've seen her play in a movie before.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who we all like for for the different roles. So let's one thing that we want to do is we want to try to recast it. I think that'll be a fun way to wrap up all of these Let's Try This Again movie podcasts that we do. So our version of Bonfire of the Vanities in 2022. I wrote down a couple of characters that I think we need to make sure we definitely focus on, right? We need a new Sherman McCoy. We need a new Peter Fallow. We need a new Maria Ruskin. We need a new Judge Leonard. We need a new DA and a new ADA. We need a new Judy McCoy. I think we need a new Mr. McCoy, right? Because I think that's who Sherman McCoy ultimately confides in more than anybody else, is his dad. We need a new Reverend Bacon, all right? We also need Maria Ruskin's husband, who we didn't talk about, was played by the great Alan King in the original movie, right? He can definitely be something. And then I think we can have an awful lot of fun with casting the detectives who will ultimately break the case. I will go to the Mrs. Morgan first to give us our first casting suggestion. You pick any character off the board and tell us who you like, Mrs. Morgan.
When I read this book, there was one person who stood out in my mind as I was seeing him as I was reading that, and that was for the character of Reverend Bacon, and that is Sterling K. Brown. I saw him in every scene because I think the Reverend in the book is much different than the Reverend in the movie. He doesn't have choirs behind him. He's described as being always very calm and even, and I think that Sterling K. Brown could do an exceptional job playing that role.
Jake, what do you think? You like Sterling K. Brown as the Reverend Bacon?
Oh, I love Sterling K. Brown. He could read a phone book. He could read the back of detergent bottles. I would listen to what he has to say. Yeah, totally. Sterling K. Brown, Reverend. Let's do this.
All right, give us one of your recasting suggestions for our 2022 remake. Sounds like we all agree on Sterling K. Brown for the Reverend Bacon. Then, Chris, you agree, or are you going to go your old contrarian route on us here?
Oh no, Sterling K. Brown can play literally anything, and I will enjoy it.
All right. So we got that cast. Boom. Reverend Bacon done. Good work, Mrs. Morgan. Jake, move us on to somebody else. Who do you got?
And what's the name of Bruce Willis's character? Fallow. So I'll go with Fallow, and I'm going to go with a dark horse here, and either say that it needs to be Paul Giamatti.
Whoa.
A frazzled Paul Giamatti, or you go with a frazzled Oscar Isaac. So Oscar Isaac would probably be the guy who we'd actually be able to get.
Kate and I were similar to Oscar Isaac. We have Adam Driver in the role of Peter Fallow. Chris, who do you got for Peter Fallow? Let's talk this out a little bit.
I had Chris Dowd.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that he could play a perfect disheveled alcoholic, especially at the beginning, and then get straightened up a little bit towards the end. But disheveled alcoholic British, I thought Chris Dowd.
I like that. That's a good call.
All right, so and now Kate and I, that's good. So we got Adam Driver, we got Oscar Isaac, we got Chris Dowd. Man, those are all three pretty good ones. We got to try to land on somebody here. Jake, are you willing to move off of yours for either of the other two that you heard?
Yes, okay. I am. I would say that as much as I love Oscar Isaac and I love to see his curly mop and a frazzled beard, and make it more of a dark comedy, just straight up embrace the dark comedy feels and themes, and just embrace that film and make it a true dark comedy with him. But yeah, I'll back off for sure.
I think we got to go Adam Driver here, Chris, and I'll tell you why. Because I think we got to have a star, right? I think we got to have a star. And as much as I like your call of Chris Dowd and having it be, he's from across the pond, I don't know that he's a big enough star. If we can put Adam Driver up against whoever we're going to cast as Sherman McCoy, those give us two pretty big names for the
I got
poster.
the star for Sherman McCoy that I think will allow us not to have that big of a name for Fallow. I do love Adam Driver, though. I think he could act the shit out of Fallow. But I think if you get somebody, and this is my pick for Sherman McCoy, that'd be Ryan Gosling.
Oh, nice. We had him on our short list.
I thought his portrayal of a Wall Street greedy son of a bitch and the Big Short was phenomenal, and I think he could expand on that type of character to get to Sherman McCoy.
He was on our short list. Jake, who'd you have on your list for Sherman McCoy?
We did too. That was our number one. Yep. He was our number one, and then Chris Hemsworth was number two on that. And I like Ryan Gosling for it. I really do. I just think Ryan Reynolds, I don't know, there's just something... I don't know how they are in age. Are they about the same age? So that really doesn't matter.
I think Ryan Reynolds is probably a little older.
Yeah, I would think so. Than Adam Driver?
Oh, yeah, that. Yeah, I would say he's probably older than Adam Driver, too. I mean, he's older than Gosling and Hemsworth.
I think it may depend on which route you're trying to take this. Are you trying to take it to a dark comedy or a straight drama?
That's true,
Yeah,
because
I think
I like
that's a good
Reynolds. I like Reynolds' manicness, right? Like, I guess I was kind of honing in on his manicness in some of those scenes, the way Tom Hanks has it.
And I think that you can still have some manicness in a drama with this character. But yeah, I think maybe Ryan Gosling might be the way to go if we're going with the drama.
He's real intense, that's for sure.
Mhm.
Gosling's real intense as
That's a
Sherman
good
McCoy.
call.
All right, well, we knocked off some of the big ones. I'm gonna go to the detective. All right, this guy's not gonna have a huge role in the movie because the detective doesn't need to have a huge role. But I'm gonna go for a guy who is an expert at just absolutely nailing small parts in movies. And every time you see him, you're like, oh yes, you're like the Leonardo DiCaprio meme from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You're just like, you're smoking and you're pointing at the screen. You're excited he's there. One of the detectives has to be John Bernthal. Have him be one of the detectives, investigate Sherman McCoy. Give me John Bernthal in the movie.
Yeah, that's a great idea. He's
And then Kate came up with this one. The other detective, Kate, came up with this one. Give me Paperboy from Atlanta. Give me Brian Tyree Henry as the second cop.
I really love both those picks. Those are two great detectives to have in the Bronx.
All right, there we go. So let's go back to the Mrs. Morgan. You know, give us somebody else that's going to be cast in the 2022 remake.
Okay, I want to talk about the ladies, all right? Yes, peripheral, but I want to talk about Judy McCoy and Maria Ruskin. So for Judy McCoy, I think Dakota Johnson could be excellent in this. And Rod had initially said, well, yeah, but what about as Maria being Melanie Griffin's daughter? And I actually think she could do a better job with Judy. And so I have Dakota Johnson as Judy. And then for Maria Ruskin, I have either Blake Lively, right, who I thought could be good with Ryan Reynolds, of course, is his wife, but then also Jennifer Lawrence. And I like casting somebody that big for a part like that because it puts her in a totally different area than what she's used to playing.
Jake, you mentioned Dakota Johnson earlier.
I love the idea of Dakota Johnson playing the wife.
See, you're with me. You're the Hollywood exec here. You're like, hey, come on, let's get her daughter. It's going to be great. We'll be able to have a whole bunch of magazine articles about it. They'll go on the talk show. Like Ellen will have her on, and they'll talk all about it. It'll be great.
But for Maria, a dark horse. You ready for this? Taylor Swift.
Oh,
You'd bring in a whole audience. You'd bring in a whole crowd of people. You'd bring in the young crowd. You'd bring in the young set. You'd bring in the 20-something women, 20-something men. I think it really would be a cross-section type of boon to bring her into the project. So yeah, Taylor Swift for Maria.
I don't find Taylor Swift sexy enough.
No.
Like, I think you have to be really sexy to play this role. And for me, personally, I just don't find Taylor Swift sexy. That's
No,
just
I don't
my,
either. She's like
my
the kid
vantage
next door.
point.
I think you're right.
Yeah. No, I like your thought though. Again, the Hollywood guy here, bringing in. Let's get Let's get her on the Twitter. Let's have her do one of those tweets with all her followers, and they'll come see the movie. Right? I mean, I get it. Speaking of old men, Chris, who do you got for either of the ladies in the 2022 remake?
I actually had Jennifer Lawrence on my short list for Judy. I thought she could play a great kind of disgruntled wife, mom.
Yeah, J-Law being angry. I could see J-Law being angry.
J-Law could play a paper bag and she would be great at it.
I kind of went the other direction. So I thought if Sherman McCoy is going to have a affair, it's got to be somebody that is different than his wife. Somebody that's not necessarily like that. So I went with an older woman and Monica Bellucci for Maria.
But you always go Monica Bellucci. I'm sorry, but you do. That is always your pick.
That's true.
She has
That's
always
true.
been your pick in the 20
Listen,
years I've known you.
She's
always been
sexy,
your
and she's
pick.
still sexy, and she would be the type of person in elite Manhattan that would have multiple affairs with multiple people, whether it be an Italian artist or a Wall Street bond trader or her elderly private charter jet husband. So
In that regard, you know who you could pick easily for this if you went with an older woman. For Maria, you could pick Kim Cattrall.
Oh, wow. How about that?
oh yeah, that would be crazy.
Let me ask another wild question here. We've been talking a little bit about inclusiveness as we've gone along. I did mention this Friday night. We've been drinking a little bit. Excuse me. How about Maria Ruskin we go inclusive here, right? Could we cast somebody like a Thandie Newton, right? Could we cast somebody like that in the role here, and then he's a Sherman McCoy again, Chris, like you said, somebody different than him, right? How much different could it be than
Halle
his wife's
Berry.
Judy McCoy? And oh yeah, there you go. Maybe she might be a little too
She's
old.
a little old.
Thandie
Yeah,
Newton's probably just as old as Halle Berry. Actually, I probably need to get somebody younger than Thandie. Oh yeah. Yeah.
That
You
would
could
be a good
Zendaya
one.
any day.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me do one other quick thing here. I
have
think
a couple other ones on this
well,
list.
we'll get to the law, the ADA side, because we haven't cast any of that stuff yet, the judge or the ADA or the DA. But let me do Mr. McCoy, because I again still think that needs to be here, right? Sherman McCoy's not confiding really in anybody in this movie, right? He doesn't really confide so much in his lawyer. I'm not so sure how much he even really trusts him, right? He's at odds with his wife. He doesn't know if he can trust the mistress anymore. He feels that the walls are caving in on him, so he only talks to his father. How about we cast Jeff Bridges as the dad to Ryan Gosling, huh? Jake, what do you think of that?
Oh, I love that. But before we go too far, we didn't think about the inclusive piece for the lead roles either. What about Michael B. Jordan?
Ooh, I like that a lot. Michael B. Jordan is smooth at about anything. I'm down.
And him kind of coming up through the ranks. He could be the journalist, but it would be great if he was played the Tom Hanks role too. I mean, I just think that we don't want to miss him. But yeah, I think that's great casting. And Jeff Bridges, well, one thing about Jeff Bridges is he's starting to get into grandpa status. You'd almost want to be like a wizened old grandpa to Ryan Gosling almost at this point. He's so old.
But he is a grandpa, right? Like,
Right.
That character is a grandpa. So in the movie, you have a very young Kirsten Dunst playing the Sherman McCoy's daughter
Right.
in the movie, and so he is a grandpa.
Okay.
We also thought about Kevin Costner or Richard Gere here.
Gere might be interesting. It's been a while since we saw Gere in anything.
And I love Michael B. Jordan. I do. I really love him. Not for this. This is a movie about race. In
white
so
privilege.
many
It's kind of
ways,
about white privilege.
and that white privilege piece. And I think that's why it could still work today. And I think that takes a
The
lot of
reporter,
that out
though,
of it.
you could maybe go inclusive
Yeah.
with the reporter. You easily could. You could make it more about that. That the reporter is more motivated by that than Chris, what you were talking about, the expat stuff. So, all right, so let's move on then to the judge, the DA, and the ADA. Chris, take any one of those three that you want.
So I actually have a bigger. So I really want to focus not on those, but I want to focus on the defense lawyer Killian and the police chief, because this is where a couple.
I didn't have you those two down, so go right ahead. Again, Contrain for Contrain's sake, and that's why I have you on.
And the police chief did have a much larger role in the book than he did in the movie, but I think you get somebody like an Idris Elba as the police chief.
Yes.
Woo!
And then in the book, Killian, the defense lawyer for McCoy, was real savvy, been in the game for a long time, Irish, gets things, has people on the inside that gets him favors. I think you go with somebody like a Jeremy Irons.
Jeremy Irons.
Oh, that's way older than what I was thinking for that role. Huh. That could work, though.
You gotta have somebody
that. I didn't have either of those rolled down, so I'm down with either one of those guys.
Yeah,
I didn't have either one of those rolled down.
The
See, I was
defense
thinking like
lawyer
a Tom Hardy for the
was
attorney.
known for being in the system for a long time. He was well known. He knows how it works. He had inside track with the police department and the DA's office. Like, he had favors. In the book, I forget what they were called, donkey favors or something like that between Irish guys. So like you could play that off. I think Jeremy Irons could play a great Irish defense lawyer in Manhattan that's seasoned, a veteran, gets high dollars. So.
All right, I like that. So we're going across the pond actors. Jake, let me ask you a question. I floated a name to the Mrs. Morgan for a possible role in this movie, right? For an idea of every once in a while it's great as a producer to get a guy who people don't think of being able to do a movie like this. And tell me Gerard Butler could not be in this movie. Tell me Gerard Butler could not be in this movie in some role.
Is there gunfire?
I don't know. That's what I mean, though. I think that you expect Gerard Butler to have gunfire on him. What if he was Peter Fallow? What if we just completely said, hey, Gerard Butler, he can be a reporter. We've seen him be a climate scientist before. He can be a reporter.
I think he plays the mayor. Now, in the movie, he didn't have hardly any type of a role at all. But in the book, it was definitely in there. He
It's
can't-
how the whole book
Gerard Butler
opens.
can't be the mayor of New York City. He can't be the mayor. You have to be American to be the mayor of New York City.
well, in this movie universe, Gerard Butler could be American.
No, I need him to have his crappy Gerard Butler voice.
If he can be a Secret Service agent, he can be a mayor.
He's been that too many times. All right, let's go to Kate then. Kate's got a great idea for the judge. I have a different idea for the judge, but Kate's got a great idea for the judge. Let's go to her here.
So I have the judge and the district attorney, and I think the district attorney, my pick for that is actually a little bit
This is good.
stronger. So the district attorney, Abe Weiss, who is, media obsessed. I think, again, a lot of the characteristics that were pawned off on him in the movie were more specific to Larry Kramer, the ADA, in the book. But I think that Abe Weiss could be played, and here's your big star, by Robert Downey Jr.
RDJ.
So not a huge part, but just enough where you're getting that big name in the movie.
Yeah, I like that because he is media obsessed, and we all know RDJ can do that. RDJ can definitely play Jewish, which that DA was in the book. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's another one I think we can just take absolutely to the bank for sure. I think RDJ, we're all like, yeah, fine, put him in our movie. Let's do that.
Now, the judge, I went away from Morgan Freeman, although, a part of me does sort of think he could still reprise the role and do it again, even though he is a bit old. But the person I chose for the judge is also very old, and that is Brian Cox.
Ooh, little Succession.
Yeah,
Little
all right.
Yeah, I like that. I mean,
All right, see,
in the book, he was definitely white, Jewish, older, supposedly fair. So I like that pick.
Yeah, and shorter and stout, too, is how he's described in the book, so that's kind of where I went with that, too.
Jake, who do you got for the judge?
That's a really good question. We're going to go dark horse here. We're going to go with the one, the only, never going to happen. I know he's not Jewish, but he plays one on TV, Al Pacino.
Ooh, wow. Hooah! Because she's got a great ass. I got 2 dead bodies on the street. No, I'm sorry. I'm doing Al Pacino now.
He could say that line to Sherman McCoy about Maria, though.
Yeah,
during
yeah,
the trial.
right?
Yeah, your mistress, she's got a great ass.
Because she got a great ass.
But then I need Hank Azaria going, good God. I need Hank Azaria in the background saying that. See, now listen, you guys keep throwing around that you want Morgan Freeman as the judge. I say Morgan Freeman is great, but Morgan Freeman is a tad bit too old. But I'm sticking with the Morgan Freeman thought here, all right? Give me a little bit younger than Morgan Freeman. How about a Delroy Lindo as the judge?
Yeah, if you wanted to go that way too, you might as well just throw Denzel Washington's name in there as well.
No, see, not enough. Denzel can't be in this movie. Because I thought about him for a second, then I was like, he can't be in this movie because then there's just too much Denzelness, right? You just can't have it. But so give me Denzel Light, right? Give me Denzel Light. Give me Chiwetel Ejiofor, right? How about
There you
him maybe
go.
as the judge?
That would work too.
All right, so I think
We have Larry Kramer. I hated Larry Kramer so much in the book. Like, I think I hated that character more than almost anyone in the entire book, even more than Sherman while I was reading it. And I love the ending of the book because, like, it sort of comes full circle, and Chris, you'll understand that, like, how everything is sort of wrapped in a bow. But I had a hard time picking someone to play the ADA. So the person who I landed on for that was Josh Gad.
I like Josh Gad an awful lot, but I had other thoughts. Jake, Chris, you guys have any thoughts for the ADA?
That's where I'll go back to maybe somebody else from my corral of potentials with an Oscar Isaac or an ADA, even Michael B. Jordan, something like that.
Oscar Isaac could actually be really.
Yeah, he could be great.
My thought here was a Skarsgård. Give me an Alexander Skarsgård. Give me a Peter Skarsgård. Maybe I was like, give me a Skarsgård. These guys are good at being.
Yeah,
They're just good at being bad guys on screen, are they not, Chris?
no, they are. So, like, really, what I was thinking here too is you get a big name in this role as well because they are pretty predominant in the film and the book. And I was looking at somebody that you would love to hate. That not only do you think that they could play a good bad guy with some skeevy behavior, but you also love to watch him in movies, and that's Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, give me McConaughey in the movie.
Yeah, McConaughey would be great.
See, I feel like he needs to be a little bit younger than that because he's like this character is in his 30s, pissed off that he went to law school and isn't making nearly as much as people he went to school with who are working with firms, and he's an assistant district attorney, and what's he doing? So I feel like you need to be a little bit younger to play this role.
Let me make you an offer. If we can get a scene in the movie where Matthew McConaughey as the assistant district attorney teaches someone how to mail strip in front of a mirror, we will employ the same technology they used in The Irishman to make Matthew McConaughey look younger on screen.
Okay,
well, you also need somebody in that ADA role who is able to pick up a juror on one of his trials, and we all know Matthew McConaughey could pick up one of their jurists on.
That's true. They don't do that in the movie version. You're right, but Kate says that's a big part of the book, and that would be tough for Josh Gad. You'd have a tough time seeing Josh Gad.
But I don't think it would be hard for Oscar Isaac.
Yeah, I like that.
No, Oscar Isaac could do that probably as well.
All right. Well, I think we've cast the movie. The final question we have is for our film guy, Jake. Who's going to direct? Who's going to direct our remake that we just cast?
Ooh, that's really good. Okay, I'm going with the one, the only, Paul Thomas Anderson.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. I feel like maybe we don't have some of his favorites in this movie, but I mean, he likes having a big, diverse cast, and we certainly gave him that.
Yeah, especially if you have J-Law. If Jennifer Lawrence pops up in it, then that's one of his go-tos.
I like that. If we can't get PTA, do you have a second choice for us? Somebody else who might be able to put this movie together?
Yeah, we're gonna go with Cary Joji Fukunaga from No Time to Die and True Detective.
Ooh. I was gonna say him and McConaughey have worked together before, man. That tracking scene where they did the raid at the house is pretty. Again, no action in this movie though.
No, we are going dark with this movie.
Yeah, True Detective. It's a flat circle, Jake. It's a flat circle.
So speaking of that scene in True Detective, which I think is one of the best cinematography scenes ever, that really does harken back to this movie that came out in 1990 because it had one of the longest single shot, single camera scenes up to that point, and that's the 5-minute opening with Bruce Willis. That's one continuous shot that's over 5 minutes. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's not nearly as cool as the opening shot of Boogie Nights, but it's cool.
But like the one thing that like we all know, this movie really did bomb. It didn't do nearly as well as what it should have or what they were hoping it would. But there was definitely some things that happened in this movie that was one of a kind, the type of things that you expect from a Brian De Palma movie. One was that opening shot with Bruce Willis. The other one was the most expensive shot of a plane landing on a runway in the history of cinema. There is a 15-second clip in the movie right before Maria lands at JFK. She's flying in. Sherman's going to go pick her up. That precedes the whole hit and run incident that happens after that. They spent $80,000 on that 15-second scene in the movie.
Which was, of course, then quadrupled by any scene involving the plane in Air Force One. And that record was smashed.
But that's crazy. $80,000 for a scene of a plane landing, which you can find free stock footage all over the place for.
And I don't even remember that scene at all. Like, I remember her getting picked up, but that's it.
So here's a little bit, and people who listen to Balls and Brew and 3D know I go deep into stats. So I'm going to go deep into this scene.
You're just emptying your notebook right now, too, just like our guy Josh Williams.
So it cost $80,000 to shoot. And it's because they wanted to shoot it with the sun setting in the background with the Empire State Building able to be shown. And so Eric Schwab, he was the second unit director, and Vilmo Zsigmond was the cinematographer of this movie. They created a chart essentially that shows when the sun would set at that particular spot, and it happened for 30 seconds on one day of the year. In order to do that, then they had to rent a Concorde because, of course, Melanie Griffith's character would be flying on a Concorde back from Europe. So they had to rent a Concorde on June 12th of that year they were filming to take off, and then turn around and land in that 30-second window.
Brian De Palma, as Jake was talking about, he was taking a big swing on this movie, things like that. Here's the other thing I need for this remake, all right? Since I said we have John Bernthal and Brian Tyree Henry as our detectives, maybe the way that we get introduced to them is we're first shown them doing a raid on some sort of a suspect's home somewhere in the Bronx, right? Like we just cut away from the plot of Bonfire of the Vanities, and there's a great tracking shot scene, right? As an homage to De Palma, like Chris just talked about, and Jake, who you said, Cary Joe Fukunaga, who's directing it. So I think that's got to be in there.
I think you could also easily do them bringing someone in to arraignment and even the courthouse in a tracking shot, because there's a lot that goes on in the book that is specific to the courthouse and to the city of the Bronx that is never shown in the movie itself. You could easily do that.
I just think ultimately we did this as a recurring gimmick here on the Morgan podcast, and we'd love to have Jake back and Chris back every time that we do this. But I think you could make this movie today. I really do. Within our IP world, I think you could do a remake. I think that Tom Wolfe is still a recognizable author. I think people still respect him enough. I just think this movie could work, right? You get a cast, maybe like the one we put together. This happens. The last question we will pose is to both of you gentlemen. Do you guys have another movie in mind? Of course, we'll get to you, Mrs. Morganino, as well. But do you guys have another movie in mind that might warrant this same kind of treatment in the future? Jake, I'll start with you.
That's a really good question. You know, it's a little after the holidays now, kiddos, and my mind leads to Die Hard. It's a sacred thing. It's a sacred text. But I would love to see a remake where we get an actual remake. You know what I mean? Start bringing some young actors in. But at the same time, I think if you're staying with this idea of a kind of a courtroom drama type thing, it'd be nice to see a remake of A Time to Kill. I love The Time to Kill. And it'd be neat to see. It'd be neat to see. I mean, McConaughey could come back as whatever he wants to do. I mean, again, he could come in and just drink whiskey the whole time, and we would love it. So
cast him as the Kevin Spacey role this time.
There you go. Exactly. But yeah, Time to Kill would be an interesting one. Any of those
certainly based off of a book as well, so that fits the criteria.
Yeah, or the Grisham books, Pelican Brief, or something like that. It'd be interesting to see a more law-based movies with police thrown in.
That's crazy, Jake, because I was thinking of The Rainmaker, actually.
Oh, Matt Damon, early Matt Damon.
Yeah,
it's just like Coppola.
I was thinking if we're going to remake a movie that was based off a book, I was thinking The Rainmaker. And then for all you fantasy fans out there, I was actually thinking, you really need to remake John Carter, because the first go-around was god-awful.
I don't even think I've seen the original John Carter, but I think that's another one of those where we talk about, I think a recurring theme would come up about just being miscast, right? And I think betting on Taylor Kitsch was probably one of the big problems for John Carter, because we've not seen much out of him since then.
No, we haven't seen anything out of him. Chris Hemsworth would have been better.
Yeah, and I think also something else that we can think about, right, is we also historical kind of movies, right? Like, sign me up for a movie about J. Edgar Hoover in the early days of the FBI, but something about the DiCaprio movie and Clint Eastwood one just didn't work. I think that's another one that you could think about. Let's go to the Mrs. Morgan. Do you have another suggestion possibly for the next time we revisit this gimmick on the Morgan podcast?
So during the pandemic, for the first time, I read Eat, Pray, Love. And I had never read it, and I'm glad I didn't read it earlier in life, because it really resonated with me now. And it was wonderful. Like, it was everything that it was cracked up to be. I loved it. And I've never seen the movie. And I heard the movie is absolutely terrible. And so I think that would be another one for this concept that I'd love to see us investigate a little bit more in that area. I mean, as far as remakes, we could talk about a lot of those, but when we talk about like a really good book compared to how it turned out in the movies, which I think there are a lot of those, Eat, Pray, Love stands out to me right now.
Well, there you go. There's a couple of suggestions from us. You can always get at us on all of our social media platforms. We have a Facebook page. You just search The Morgan We are at The Morgan with the letter U, on Twitter. And I believe we're the Morgan podcast on Instagram. And you can send us an email at themorgan574@gmail.com. If you're listening to this and enjoyed it, give us a suggestion. Maybe the next time we do, let's try this again. It could be the movie you suggested. So now I will say goodbye to our esteemed guest, Mr. Williams, Jake Williams. Thank you so much for carving out a little time for us. I think we might have you back on here in a couple of weeks. We should probably touch on the Oscars a little bit. I have a feeling that this year is going to be, our dollars are going to be down way less than they were in the past. Because, I mean, I remember there was a couple of years hot and heavy where you were big on the Oscar bets with us when we were working at Hollywood Video together.
Oh, yeah, man. This used to be wide open. I don't really know. I really don't know where we're going to go this year. Have they made the nominees yet? They haven't done.
They have not. That's what I mean. We'll wait till the nominees come out and we get a little closer to the actual award show day, and we'll come on with some sort of an Oscar show. So Jake, thank you so much for coming back on. We'll have you on again in the future. Chris, I'm working the heck out of you, man. You're doing Balls and Brew with me now. Now I bring you over here to the Morgan podcast. We just did another NBA show. Am I making you talk too much, or are you okay?
Oh, no, not at all. I'm doing great. I love doing this. And I'm just going to throw this out there for all you history buffs out there. If you want to know the true history of the Bonfire of the Vanities, look up a guy. He was a Dominican priest, Girolamo Savonarola. He was essentially the leader of Florence between 1492 and 1497. The original Bonfire of the Vanities was taking pieces of art, books, text, whatever that was deemed to have no religious value and be burnt in huge bonfires. That's kind of the moral of the story in Tom Wolfe's book is this stuff that is vanity laden and greed laden is not worth it.
That's incredible. Chris just told us about the 14th century and his grandfather clock clicked on in the background. That is the Morgan bingo right there. Oh, thank you so much to the Mrs. Morgan for being my lovely co-host in life and helping me out on this very podcast. I appreciate you so much, sweetheart.
Good being with you, gentlemen, this evening.
And that is all for the podcast this week. Stay with us. We have an episode coming up about the Super Bowl. Our football handicapper Josh Williams will be back on, and Mr. Jamriska and I will be taking care of all the wrestling ins and outs over on Yeah We Know in the Ring with Jimmy and Brett. And don't forget that everything going on in the Morgan universe is always available for you at themorganknow.com, including my ambitions as a writer, the blog written by the lovely Mrs. Morgan Until next time, that's the Morgan